Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with allthingsbbq.com, and this is the smoked holiday turkey. Well, it's that time of year again, time to start thinking about holiday meals, and what's more holiday-centric than the holiday turkey. Great at Thanksgiving, great at Christmas time, whatever you're celebrating, a turkey is a great centerpiece for a fantastic meal. Today we're going to be taking a turkey, spatchcocking it, which means to cut the backbone out. This is the best way to cook a turkey, and that's why we do it year after year. But this year we've got a few new twists. We're going to be brining it, not a surprise, but there's a special treatment for the outside of the turkey. What we're working with today is an 11-pound turkey that's been previously frozen. This is typically the kind of thing that you're going to find at the store. Most of us are going to cook a bird that's been previously frozen, and that's fine. There's a few things you want to look out for. 11 pounds is on the small side, but I would rather cook two 11-pound birds than one 22-pound bird, just because they cook faster and it's easier to keep them moist and juicy in the end. You're gonna get a better result out of two smaller birds versus one large one. Now today we're gonna be cooking a 15-pound bird, which I started brining last night, and that's the sweet spot for me. That'll definitely feed you about 8 people. I like to plan on about a pound per person, and the yield, I never try and guess it'll be more than 50% of the original weight. So a 15-pound bird, 7.5 pounds of meat, that's about 8 people. The other thing you want to look out for when you're shopping for turkeys is the amount of solution that's already been pumped into the turkey. And this is going to be the case when you buy frozen birds. They add some extra solution, assuming you're going to overcook your turkey. They're trying to help you out. The other thing is they get to charge you for every bit of extra water and maybe a little bit of salt that they add to it. Anything below 8% is really pretty good when it comes to this kind of bird. But you're going to want to watch out, because there's ones out there that are like 20%, 15%. That's way too much solution. You've got to overcome that during the brining process, and you got to pay for it. With that said, let's get into how to actually break these birds down, because it doesn't matter the size of the bird, you're going to go through the same process. Now, when we cook a spatchcock bird, what we need to do is take out the backbone. This is a very simple process when you've got a nice pair of shears like these Wüsthoffs. You need some poultry shears that have a little bit of power behind them, and they should be nice and sharp. So I'm going to start right at the bottom of the backbone, and we're just going to cut right along the side of that backbone. Now once you get to the top, just flip it around and come right back down the opposite side of the backbone. You're going to have to work around a little knuckle right here coming off the thigh. But again, nice set of shears, no problem. So now we've opened up the cavity, but the idea here with the spatchcocking is to get the bird to lay flat so everything cooks evenly. And in order to do that, you're going to want to get in there and snip right along that breastbone. And then when you flip this over, put a little bit of pressure right here, and it lays down flat. So now we've got all of the meat roughly on the same level, and that's going to allow the dark meat to cook at the same rate and be done at the same time as the white meat. Now the backbone, you don't necessarily want to throw that away. If you check out our website, there's instructions on how to make a really nice turkey stock using the backbone. The same thing could be said about the wingtips, but they've already been taken off on this bird, and that's fine. We can always tuck these in rather than tucking the tips back, and we'll keep everything nice and tight so it tries to cook evenly. But before we get this thing into the brine, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. A lot of this fat is excessive. We don't need that stuff. If you got some extra parts that you don't want to chew on later, maybe you want to pick those out of there as well. So there's no reason to hold on to this skin connecting the thighs here. We want the legs to lay down on their own anyway. And we actually want to get to where we can expose the meat by pulling the skin back. So once we kind of release this, we're going to create some area for that brine and eventually for our rub to penetrate into the meat and not just on the skin. So you can do this by hand, and honestly you can do as much or as little trimming here as you want. This piece, this flap here doesn't need to be there, but you're not going to hurt anything if you leave it behind. The key really is to expose the meat so we can get some extra flavor under there. Now we are going to do a little extra trimming on this just to make it look a little bit nicer and for there to be less to pick over in the end. I'm gonna start down here on this thigh. Right underneath here, there's a bit of a bone from where we cut alongside the backbone, but there's not much else to that. So I'm gonna slide my knife right underneath it, and we'll take that out of there. Again, we're doing some optional trimming at this point. We're gonna work our way right around that ball where the joint is, which is right here at the end of the thigh. So not really losing anything there. We can do the same thing to the other side, but before we flip over there, I'll show you we've got a little bit of bone here. And my main concern here is I just don't want these bones to end up in the meat later on so that someone ends up biting one. Next to that, you've got the rib cage. Really no meat to speak of right there, so you can trim that up. And now you've just got a much more clean presentation here, less stuff in the way. So let's just work our way around the perimeter of the bird. We've got a lot of extra fat here and skin on this neck. We're not gonna need all that, so I'm gonna take that off. And if you can take off some of this fat that's stuck to the back of the skin, it'll really help that skin render better during the cooking process. Because essentially, the more fat that you leave on the back side of the skin, the more soggy the skin's gonna be in the end. It just takes a long time to render all that fat out. Now, continuing to work around the perimeter here, there's a bone that sticks out in between this wing and the ribs, and you can actually run your knife all the way down to the end of it. Give it a little pull and cut around that joint, and it cuts right out of there. Do just a little bit of trimming on the ribs, and we've worked all the way around to that other side where we're gonna slide off that bone that's connected to the thigh joint. Make sure we don't leave any fragments behind. If you are gonna go all in, this is kind of what it would look like. But again, don't feel intimidated if you haven't done this before. You don't even have to get this detailed. All right, one last thing we're gonna do before we get this in the brine is take out the wishbone. So right here, this is the wishbone. Again, you don't have to take it out now, but if you do, you can slice slices of the breast, the white meat, right off the whole bird, which is fantastic for presentation. And this is really simple. You start at the base where that V kind of comes together, slide your knife just underneath, it's a flat bone, and right out the other side, and then come out to the end. And then you can kind of just work your knife down to the base of that wishbone. And pull it right out of there. So now let's flip this thing over. You can imagine when this whole bird is fully cooked, now you're taking slices right off the breast because you don't have that bone in the way to stop you. So now that we got the bird trimmed, we're gonna get it into our briner bucket and start to build our brine solution. So we're gonna handle the bird carefully now because remember there's nothing attaching those thighs to the rest of the carcass. So you wanna make sure that you don't just go ahead and pull the thighs all the way off. I'm gonna go breast down in here. And one of the cool things about spatchcocking is when you do this, you really take a lot of area out so you can get multiple birds in here with the same amount of brine. But for the brine, we're gonna be using the Sweetwater Spice Classic Holiday Turkey Brine Bath. And this is an apple juice based brine. Still got plenty of salt, but you can actually see the chunks of fresh rosemary coming out of there, and you can smell it immediately. It smells so good. This is ideal for turkey flavors. So next what we're gonna do is we're gonna add another bottle's worth of water to this, shake this out, and we get all the goodness out of there, make sure that we get it into our brine. pour that right over the bird as well. Now, in addition to that apple juice and the water that's in there, there's also a bit of salt, but we want to bump that up a bit, and this is right off the bottle. They tell you exactly how to do this. You're going to add a half cup of kosher salt to a quart of water and just dissolve that. So once you've got most of that kosher salt dissolved, we're going to dump that on top of the turkey as well. And this is your brine base. From here, you can add up to a gallon of water without adding any more salt. But what you're looking to do is just get enough liquid in there to fully submerge the turkey. So I'm just going to get in here, slosh everything around so that I know those ingredients are distributed evenly. And then the beauty of the briner bucket is that it has this locking plate, so you don't have to try and submerge this with a bunch of plates and bowls or whatever. Just slide that plate in, lock it in place, and that is good to brine. So now let's talk about time. Ideally, you want an hour per pound on the bird. So if we got an 11-pound bird, we want 11 hours of brine time. But really, you can go up to like an hour and a half per pound. You're not going to cause it any damage. So if you throw this into the fridge at, let's say, 5 p.m., the next morning, 5 a.m. is 12 hours, it'd be fine. You can do it any time after that, probably up to noon or so, and you're not going to do any damage. And what's happening during that time when it's brining is the salt is using osmosis to open up the meat. So the meat pores get bigger, which allows more juice to stay inside, so you end up with a juicier product. At the same time, we've got all those extra flavors in there. We've got apple juice, which works with just a little bit of acid as a marinade, but it also adds that nice apple flavor. We've got sage, rosemary, there's lemon and orange peel going on in there. These are all flavors that you think of when you think of Thanksgiving or think of the holidays. All right, so here we have a bird, a 15-pound turkey that I brined last night. This one's a 15-pounder. It's been about 18 hours that it's been in our brine. Perfect. It's darkened up a little bit from all of the color coming out of that brine, which is fine, but look under here. This is where you can really tell that we've done some work because we're seeing these bits of flavor are underneath the skin, and that's why we open that up to start with. The next thing we want to do is get this skin completely dried off. We're going to use some paper towels to sop up that excess moisture and then stick it on a drying rack and back into the refrigerator to dry out while we prep the rest of this meal. We're going to be cooking our turkey on a bed of vegetables, so we need to get all of those prepped up, and that works out because you want to give this some time to really dry out. That's going to give you the best skin in the end. So we'll get this over here on our wire rack and just start to get some of that excess moisture off of the skin. As you can see, this bird's a little bit bigger and it still has its wingtips intact, which is fine. I actually don't mind having the wingtips because as you'll see here in a little bit, when we get this thing seasoned up, you can tuck them back and then they hold in place a little bit better while it's cooking. Just like that. Because of the spatchcocking, all of the skin is face up, which is great, except for what's on the bottom of the legs. We give a little bit of air underneath that, but otherwise we can kind of let it dry out just in the fridge sitting just like this. So we're gonna get our veggies prepped up here. We'll start with our butternut squash, which is really the only veggie we're using that's not a root vegetable for our bed of veggies. And I'm just gonna take the skin off with a peeler. Normally we would just cook these whole and scoop the flesh out, but we're trying to get these into a large dice to go into the bottom of our roasting pan. I'm actually going to split this into wedges today. And with any and all of these vegetables, you just want to keep in mind that they're going to be roasting for a while, so cut them into rather large chunks. Next, we'll do some baby red potatoes, and these don't need to be broken down at all because of their size. Also want to add some yellow onion. You know what, we're just going to do some rather large wedges on these as well. Next, we've got some carrots. And just for reference for what we're doing today, there's about half as much carrot, turnip, and parsnip as there is the potatoes, onions, and butternut squash. But you guys can do whatever you like with your bed of veggies. There's no rules here. Again, rather large pieces. Next, we've got some purple turnips. I'm just going to take that outer layer off. Could also just scrub these really well, but we got the peeler out, so why not? Man, I love that spicy bite. Comes out of those turnips. That's going to be a nice little variance in there. These will do slightly smaller dice on because they're pretty dense. Next, we've got some parsnips. I'm going to get those peeled and diced as well. So we take these into similar size as the carrots. You got a slightly different texture than a carrot. A little bit more of an herbal note on them. I'm getting this pan filled up, which is great. I'm going to cover the whole surface. Next, we've got some celery, and honestly, if you could get a hold of celery root, that would be ideal for this, but the celery stalks themselves will work as well. Celery root's not always as available. And now we're getting some really beautiful colors going on between the green, purple, orange. All that's really left to do is add some aromatics here. So we've got some garlic. We'll just smash those, peel them off, and we'll throw them in there whole. We'll scatter our garlic cloves around, and then we're just going to start tucking in some of our herbs here. Some rosemary, some thyme. We're going to do a little bit of seasoning on this, but it's going to really stay pretty basic. We're going to start with some really good quality extra virgin olive oil, get them coated a little bit. And then over the top, just some hickory smoked salt, fresh cracked black pepper. Go easy on the salt here. You got to remember that we're going to put a big old turkey on top of here. And the reason we're doing this is so that as we get that turkey on top cooking down, all the seasonings, all the drippings come off the turkey and start to cook in the pan here with our veggies. So you essentially are making a really great little turkey stock in the pan, and you can take those drippings and add them to your gravy to really amplify the turkey flavor to your gravy. So now that our veggies are ready to go, our turkey's been drying out, it's time to get the turkey seasoned up so we can get it on the grill. Today we're going to be using a really cool technique, the mayonnaise slather. That's right, we're going to be making a slather out of mayonnaise, our turkey seasoning, a little bit of garlic, some sage. We're going to mix it all up and rub it all over the outside of the bird. And what's going to happen is as that bird cooks, the mayonnaise cooks into the skin, locks in all that moisture. You get fantastic flavor and fat content on the outside of the turkey, because you got to remember that mayo is largely oil. So let's get this slather put together so we can get this bird on the grill. We're starting out with the best mayonnaise we can get our hands on, 1 cup of Duke's. Creamy, delicious Duke's mayo. Not a bad place to start. We're gonna add to that a tablespoon of fresh minced sage leaves. Continuing down that holiday flavor profile path. We're also going to add a teaspoon of minced garlic and 1 tablespoon of Cattleman's Grill Ranchero seasoning. And this is that seasoning that we developed with Cattleman's and is ideal for poultry and turkey. It's kind of become the go-to turkey rub. Of course, it's got salt, but it's also got garlic and onion, some great herbs and spices in there, a little bit of rosemary. Pretty much everything you're looking for. And that is the slather. So back to our turkey now. Let's flip this guy over. We want to get some seasoning on the back side of the bird. Coming in with the Cattleman's Ranchero. Anywhere you see exposed meat, add a little bit of seasoning. Also going to get underneath the skin, all around on the thighs and legs. And get all the way to the front side from here. Slide those back underneath the skin. And we'll flip this over. And we want to get underneath the skin on the breast as well. This is a little bit tighter. You'll have to maneuver your way around to make sure you get seasoning all the way down. And careful not to tear the skin. And this is really important because it's hard for all that seasoning to penetrate through the skin. So we start by seasoning the meat itself, and then we season the skin on top. Before we hit it with the slather, we're going to transfer it to our bed of veggies so it's just ready to go once we get that slathered. Set that right on top there. I'm getting excited for this already. We got a few hours to go. Might as well just work our way from the top down. Now, this may not be the most appetizing part of this recipe, but trust me, it'll be worth it in the end. Let's be honest, there's nothing all that sexy about raw poultry in general. But man, the way this browns up, it's totally worth the process. All right, we've used up the majority of that slather. Let's not forget to tuck our wings back. Just pull those back behind. And that keeps that wing tucked in there tight. And make sure we didn't miss any spots. And then, just for appearances especially, a little bit of that black pepper popping out on top, lightly over the top, and we're good to go to the grill. We're smoking our turkey today on the Yoder Smoker's YS640S pellet grill. It's running at 275 degrees, an ideal temperature for when you're smoking poultry, and we're running pecan pellets today. Let's slide this right here in the center and get our probe into the breast. Now the breast meat we want to come up to about 155 to 160 for finishing. The legs will be a good 15 degrees ahead of that, but that's where we want them to finish properly. Well, we're about 2.5 hours, just a little bit more than 2.5 hours into the smoke on the turkey, and internal temperatures come up to 135, and that's our first target point that we're looking for because we want to finish this nice and hot. We've been smoking at 275. We're going to crank it all the way up to 425 to really help brown the outside and get that skin just a little bit of crisp to it. You can see the way the skin's been shrinking back. We're getting some nice browning around the edges. It's really soaked up a lot of smoke, and that's what we're looking for right now. To finish it off, we're just going to turn that temp up. Now we're shooting for a finishing temperature around 155 to 160. That's where we're going to pull the bird off, let it rest. It'll come up to about 165 internal on the breast. And again, the thighs are going to be further beyond that, but that's how we like them to make sure we get a really nice velvety texture on the thigh meat. So we'll just keep an eye on that internal temperature as it continues to climb. My guess is we've got another 45 minutes or so, but you really don't want to go by timelines at this point because every bird cooks a little bit different and every bird is a little bit different size, right? So even though we may both be cooking a bird with 14 or 15 pounds, you never know what the time difference is going to be. It's been about 40 minutes. You can see we're at 156, almost 157 since we cranked that temperature up. So we're going to get inside the pit and check with an instant read. But the first thing to take note of is just how beautiful that color is. I mean, what great texture on the outside of the turkey. And then we're just gonna probe around a little bit and see, does the deepest part actually match that 157? Oh, we got a little bit lower here, 150. And that's why we check with an instant read as well. So we'll probably want to give this just about 5 to 10 more minutes before we pull it off. We'll also check on those vegetables. They're really softening up as well. And check out all of that juice that's gathered in the bottom. That's pan drippings for gravy. All right, we're ready to come off now. I'm gonna very carefully take this out because we got a lot of juice in this pan. Man, that smell. We've given the turkey about 20 minutes to rest now, and during that time, all the juices have run back out from the center of the turkey all the way out to the edges, so we have a juicy bite from one end to the other. So let's get into carving that turkey up. Now for these vegetables, we're gonna strain off all of this liquid so that they're not just sitting in that. And you can pick out your sprigs of fresh herbs at this time. But these should all be pretty much cooked all the way through. A gentle squeeze and those potatoes are tender. And you gotta remember the flavor on these things. They're just covered in turkey juice. They've got the seasoning from the ranchero as well. Everything that's come out of that classic holiday brine. Tons of flavor in those veggies. So we're just gonna turn our veggies out onto a platter for now. And that liquid you'll wanna save. It's great for running your turkey slices through, great for making gravy with. So we're essentially just gonna take the bird apart now. The easiest place to start is right here in between the thighs and the rest of the bird, because that's already separated. All you're doing is cutting through skin. Now to break these down a little bit further, you can come right in between the two, the thigh and the leg muscle. You get down in here and find that ball joint and cut right in between them. Now somebody's got a nice turkey leg. And then for the thigh, you can pull chunks of the thigh meat off, or if you want to slice up a little bit of that skin, you can just dig the bone out. You got a couple of them in there. And you can cut some slices out of that as well. Ooh, lots of juice still holding up in that thigh. So we'll do the same thing here. Get right down in between the two, find that ball joint, and go right in between. And then for this thigh, I'm just gonna chunk this meat up. Should pull apart pretty easy at this point, as this dark meat was over 170 degrees by the time it was finished, which is where it really turns to velvet. And now for the breasts. We're gonna get this wing off of here first thing. And again, there's joints all over this thing. If you can find where they are, then you can figure out how to dismantle it. And all it takes is feeling your way around with a knife just a little bit. The wings separate much like the legs do. And that leaves you with the breast, which again, you remember we took the wishbone out up there at the top, so you can cut all the way down to the rib cage, all in one nice even slice. And then just run your knife right underneath all those slices to take them off. Just like that. Let's take a look at the slices of white meat. Look at all the juice running out of there. We're not going to squeeze too much because we want to keep it right there. All right, I'm going in for a bite. We're going to get some white meat with some of that skin. Ooh, nice little crunch on that skin. It's so flavorful. I just need a moment. No, this tastes incredible, guys, and it's really that combination of the ranchero with the classic holiday. They're all the holiday flavors, from the apple juice to the herbs, the rosemary. You're getting all of that nice salt, onion, garlic. It's just the perfect pairing, and honestly, that's why we like to help you guys out by putting together some kits to help you cook your turkeys. And we're doing that again this year. You guys should check them out at allthingsbbq.com. This is the classic turkey kit. I've been able to curate just a few really nice flavor kits, this one being the traditional bird. So whether you're looking to do something traditional or maybe a barbecue bird, you're gonna see all of that in the coming weeks. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the recipe, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below. Let's be good to one another, and don't forget to eat your veggies. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.